Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bryce Kirkpatrick, Turf Program Director here at Real Turf Solutions, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about Tuesday tip of fertilization. Fertilization, it's that time of the year as temperatures start to rise. You're starting to go ahead and feed that lawn so you can help promote that growth that you're looking for, which is that green look that everybody's looking for as well. So a big thing I like to tell most people that want to do this for themselves, or if you want to hire us for the program, some of the things that we do, and of course we always recommend, is if you haven't pulled a soil sample in a long time, I recommend you kind of doing that before you decide. Just go to the Lowe's or Home Depot or even to some other local hardware store to buy a bag of fertilizer and throw it out, because there may be some things in that soil that you either have a lot of or not enough of that may be causing some of the issues that you've noticed over the year. And so a lot of times just going and buying a bag of fertilizer and throwing it out there is not going to necessarily cause it to just green up overnight and heal up and be issue free. So I recommend going down to local extension office. They'll be glad to help you out. They'll even come out and do it for you in some cases. If not, they will at least walk you through the process of pulling that soil sample. It's pretty simple. You basically want to gather some soil, and you want to kind of get as deep as you can, 2 or 3 inches down in the soil, deeper if you can. It's preferred that way. You can kind of really get that analysis done to give you a good idea of what's in that soil. And then at that point, those analyses will tell you exactly what fertilizer to apply and how many pounds per thousand that you may want to apply. So from there, you want to be able to kind of understand what turf type you have as well, because that also coincides with the soil sample that you're going to pull. And so if you have a centipede yard, obviously centipedes don't require a lot of nitrogen. They don't require near as much as like a Bermuda or even a zoysia grass does, even your St. Augustine. So at that point, you want to be able to understand that I don't need to put out too much fertilizer based on those turf types. And then secondly, you need to understand the bag and how and what's basically made up of a bag. So in a bag, you have 3 numbers. You have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so at that particular rate, you want to understand that 1704 is a very popular brand, or 10-10-10. What that basically means is there's 17% nitrogen content in that bag, or there's 10% nitrogen content in that bag. And so at that based on rate, that's kind of how you understand how much of that bag to apply. So obviously the lower the number, the little bit more fertilizer you have to put out to achieve an ultimate goal of a certain amount of nitrogen based on what the soil sample says, or if you're trying to fertilize based on how many pounds you want to put out per thousand per year. So basically you want to kind of understand your labeling on your bags of fertilizer. So your bags will actually tell you, most of them will, especially if you buy them from Ace Hardwares or Lowe's or stuff like that, they'll have on there that this bag covers a particular square feet, and that's based on that particular rate, which usually says on there, and it may be 1 pound per thousand, or it may be half a pound per thousand. And so you need to be conscious of that, because if you buy too much and throw too much out there, you can cause issues. One thing that I like to make sure people understand is centipede is not supposed to be super green. It's supposed to be kind of a lightish yellowish green color. So if your yard is centipede and it's super green, that means you applied way too much nitrogen, and obviously it may look good, but you can cause some issues further down the line by putting too much nitrogen out at one time like that. So, and another good thing to keep in mind is you don't want to fertilize on wet turf. It's always best to allow that turf to dry before applying that nitrogen, so you don't get that initial burn once that fertilizer hits the leaf blade. So it's always best to wait until after the mid-morning, once that moisture is dried up off the leaf blades. And then another good thing that I like to recommend is the quicker you can water that in, the faster that product's going to work as well. So those are a few things to keep in mind. You always want to understand why you're fertilizing, whether it's to be applying a certain nutrient that your soil may be lacking. You also want to understand what turf you have, because that also makes a big difference of what you're applying. And then of course you want to understand the bags and understand the labeling of those bags and how that product's supposed to work. And then the last thing that I always tell people is be conscious of how you spread that fertilizer. You want to make sure that you do it as evenly as possible. The best thing I like to say is if a bag says it'll cover 5,000 square feet, you want to bump that rate in half, and you want to go one direction and then come back a totally different direction in order to cover that evenly, because if you don't, you can see those really streaky spots in yards. So other than that, I think if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call. We'll be glad to help you out any way we can. 478-988-0043. And as always, we appreciate y'all's business, and thanks for tuning in on today's Tuesday Tip.